Hello, dear students. In our last session, we read the poem On Killing a Tree and we also discussed the different stanza wise meaning of the poem. So, let's start this session. We will be discussing the theme of the poem, a few poetic devices, and the questions answers also. So, let us begin with the theme of the poem. The poet, we can say, he has used a reverse psychology in this poem to ridicule man's mindless act of cutting trees for self sustenance. Now, he has used a very sarcastic tone when he encourages man to kill the tree completely so that it has no scope of growing back. So, how we see that here, G.V. Patel actually he condemns, he criticizes man's ruthlessness of treating the gift of nature so callously. Now we see that how tree is alive and it also goes through all the phases of life like any living organism. So felling a tree, cutting a tree or killing a tree is an inhumane act, just it is like murder. So the poet here is actually highlighting the problem of deforestation, which is a major threat to the ecosystem. So the poet clearly conveys the message that trees should not be cut. They are precious and valuable too. So, on the superficial level of the poem, the poet is actually highlighting the importance of trees in our life. The poet then also gives a symbolic reference in the poem. He in the poem symbolizes the tree to be a deep rooted evil. He says that a tree cannot be killed out just by hacking and chopping it. So, to put it to a permanent end, it should be uprooted entirely and left out to wither in the sun. So, in the same way, the social evils, it cannot be put out just by criticizing them. So, you cannot just talk on the issues to end it. The society should uproot them so that these evils can be ended or removed from the society. So, thus, he says that if you want to get rid of the evils, then it is important that its source has to be found out and we need to drain its life in full and thereby leaving no chance of its sprouting and rising again. So, this is the theme and the message which is conveyed by the poet in the poem. Now, talking about the literary devices, first of all, we see that there is no particular rhyme scheme in the poem. It is written in free verse. Okay? So, there is no rhyme scheme or rhythm in the poem. Then, the next poetic device is the use of metaphor. So, we have already discussed that when the poet talks about the leprous hide, bleeding bark, then anchoring earth, earth cave, these are all metaphor used in the poem. Then there is alliteration. In bleeding bark, the B sound is repeated. Then white and wet, the V sound is repeated there, right? And the poet has also used personification when we read the second stanza in the poem, where we see that the poet has personified when he talks about the bleeding barks, right? So these are the few poetic devices. The poet has also used images in the poem to describe. So the images are like air, water, tree, the sprouting leaves, and the bleeding barks. These are all images to make the poem more clear so that the readers, he can understand the various ideas which is conveyed in the poem by actually imagining it, seeing the objects in front of him as he reads through the lines of the poems, right? So these are the few poetic devices in the poem. Now let us start with the question answers. So thinking about poem, the first question is, can a simple jab of the knife kill a tree? Why? Why not? So when we see as per the poem, we see that how the poet has said that no, a simple jab of knife cannot kill a tree. So the place from where the tree is cut will give out sap, and once the wound heals, new branches and leaves will grow from it, which will develop into tree again. So we see that how the poet says that how the tree, it grows into full size uh, by absorbing nutrients uh, from the soil with the help of sun, water, and air. So it undergoes a hard process of many years, and it cannot be killed easily by just simple jab of a knife. Second question: how has the tree grown to its full size? List the words suggestive of its life and activity. So we see that how in first stanza it is clearly referred, the tree, it has grown by consuming nutrients from the earth, absorbing sunlight, air, and water. So the words suggestive of its life and activity are consuming the earth, rising out of it, feeding upon its crust, absorbing years of sunlight, air, and water. Next question. What is the meaning of bleeding bark? What makes it bleed? So here bleeding bark, it refers to the sap, the liquid which flows out of tree's bark where it is cut. So जहाँ पर हम tree पर cut लगाते हैं, the liquid that flows out, it is the sap, and it is referred to as bleeding bark. That means the tree bleeds when it is cut with a knife, right? So when someone snaps a part of the tree or a tree's trunk, a sap, it oozes out from that part, and this is bleeding bark, right? So the bark bleeds when the tree is hacked or chopped with a knife or an axe. The poet says, no, in the beginning of the third stanza. This is the fourth question. What does he mean by this? No here means that the tree will not die by simply cutting or chopping the trunk. So, here in the beginning of the third stanza, the poet makes this fact very clear by telling us that no, with a simple jab of knife or a violent strike of an axe, the tree, it cannot be killed until and unless it is uprooted completely. Right? Then the fifth question: what is the meaning of anchoring earth and earth cave? Now here the as we see that the earth, it gives support to the stem of the tree, right? So when it is acting as a support system to the tree, so it is actually called the anchor. So it is anchoring earth. And on the other side, the earth gives shelter to the roots under its surface. So it is called the earth cave. So we see that how the tree stands tall and firm because of its strong roots that have embedded deeply in the earth. So the earth, it protects the roots by giving them shelter and thus keeps the tree safe. So in that sense, it is referred as anchoring earth and earth cave. Right, students? Next is, what does he mean by the strength of the tree exposed? That means, what does the poet wants to tell us here? Now, when we talk about the strength of the tree, so which is the strength, or what is the strength here? Here, the strength, it refers to the most sensitive and important part of the tree, that is the roots. So the poet here says that the strength, the real strength of the tree lies in its roots. So when the roots of the tree are pulled out, it means the strength of the tree is exposed, and thus when it is pulled out, the life support system of the tree, it ends there. So as we see that how the roots, they feed the tree with the water and essential nutrients from the soil. So when the roots are pulled out, the strength of the tree, it actually is exposed, and the tree then dies there. And the last question here: what finally kills the tree? So, as the poet has already mentioned, so we will start that from the point where the poet says that a tree cannot be killed by hacking and chopping. To kill it permanently, it should be uprooted. It should then be left to wither in the sun, and in this way, a tree is finally killed. So we see that how when the strength of the root is exposed, then how the tree, it starts to wither, it starts to harden, it gets twisted, and then finally the tree is killed. So, this way, you will write the answers. I hope this poem and all the question answers are clear to you, students. So, thank you all. Have a nice day, students.